everybody, this is Mrs. Lehman. Sorry I couldn't be here today, but I'm super glad that we have Mr. Aubin in for us to take care of all the business that we have going on. Yesterday was kind of a hectic day. We had a lot of papers being turned in. The first thing that you guys were in charge of doing was test corrections and having your parents sign your test acknowledging what your score was. There are a few people who did not turn that in. There are also some people who did not turn in the test retake for Module 1. So if at this time you have any of those, Mr. Aubin has a list of those people. Please make sure you get those turned in to him. Secondly, you had homework last night, and your homework was your multiplying decimals worksheet. You had to do the odd numbers only, and your work was to be on a separate sheet of paper, so that also needs to be collected. So make sure your name and the class period are on those papers, and please staple those together, and those need to be turned in as well. I'll have the class secretary maybe take care of that. Alrighty, so once that's all taken care of, we can get started with this bell ringer, which asks you what is the product of 7 and 6800ths and 6100ths. So one thing that we talked about yesterday is, first of all, we reviewed how to add and subtract decimals, and when you add and subtract decimals, you line up the decimal point, right? But when we're multiplying decimals, you need to just set them up as if they were whole numbers. You're ignoring the fact that there are decimals in these factors, and what you're doing is just setting them up with the one with the most numbers, the biggest amount of digits, not necessarily the biggest value number, but the one with the most digits going on top. So in this case, this first number has 3 digits we're multiplying by, and this one really has 2 because we're not going to multiply by that 0 in front. So we have 7 and 6800ths times 0 and 6100ths. So I'm going to set it up like that, and then I'm going to go through the same process of multiplying. All right, now in this case, it happens to be that the decimal place is lining up, or the decimal point is lining up, but you know, that's not going to happen often. And it certainly does not mean we just drop that decimal point down. That is not something we do with multiplication. So we're just going to set up the decimal, or the multiplication. We're going to multiply, and then we'll deal with the decimal point later. All right, so anyway, we have 8 times 1, which is 8. 1 times 6, which is 6, and 1 times 7, which is 7. Easy. All right, now we're going to move on to multiplying by this 6 here. So we need a 0 placeholder. So we're going to do 6 times 8, which is 48. We're going to carry that 4, put it right up here. 6 times 6 is 36. 36 plus 4 is 40. Carry the 4. 6 times 7 is 42. 42 plus 4 is 46. All right, your next step is going to be to add these numbers. So we're going to get 8 plus 0 is 8. 6 plus 8 is 14. Carry your 1. 7 plus 1 is 8. We have 6 in the 4. Now, to figure out where we put that decimal point, what we have to do is look and see how many places we have past the decimal. So I'm going to underline these in red. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So we have 2 here, and we have 2 more here. So we have a total of 4 spots that we multiplied past the decimal point to the right of the decimal. So we're going to move it over 4 spots. We're going to start right here, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 spots in. So that's going to equal 4.6848. Alrighty. So there you have it. I'm going to rewrite it, like I said, for neatness. We talked about this yesterday because you don't want all those loop-de-doos on your paper. So hopefully you got plenty of practice on multiplying decimals yesterday. Some kids told me that you guys already learned how to do this stuff, so that's super great. But we are now going to go into your modules. We are going to go to lesson 13, which is on page, let me find my book. We are on page 9, all right? So if everyone could flip to page 9. Lesson 13 says dividing multi-digit numbers using the algorithm. So what is an algorithm? Well, that is a word that will make you sound like you're super smart. All that means is a standard way of doing something, a set way of performing a task. So in math, we have an algorithm for division, a set way of doing that, a standard practice, so to speak. So it's just the way that we do that. It's the way that people have been doing division for years and years, and we are actually going to use the old school, regular old long division method. All right, I do have a few mnemonic devices that I've stolen from other people over the years on how to remember the steps of long division. But one thing that's super important, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that knowing your multiplication facts is very important. All right, this module is all about your ability to calculate. So you need to know how to multiply. You need to know how to multiply in order to divide. But we're also going to learn least common multiple and greatest common factor, all of which takes into account your ability to multiply to get numbers. Okay, so we are going to actually take a few notes before we get into this first problem, which asks us to create a model. And guess what? I'm not doing that. So we are going to use the algorithm for all of these examples, but we need to learn what the algorithm is. So if you guys could please flip to the tabbed section that we tabbed off yesterday to get us to the notes at the back, we are going to add to our notes. So let me add a new page on here, if it will let me. It will. All right, so you guys have the line down the side, and we are going to write. Yesterday we put all of the fancy words, so when we find the answer to a division problem, we are looking for the quotient. All right, that is the word for the answer to a division problem. So guys, I really hope you have your glasses today because it does help with division. All right, so quotient means the answer to a division problem. All right, so let's write the algorithm. Make sure I'm spelling this right. A-L-G-O-R-I-T-H-M. Algorithm for division. So this is when we have to split a number up. We have to share a number equally amongst so many groups. And you guys probably have done some division, but really this module is going to take it a step further. So as you can probably guess, we're going to use some decimals. So this first lesson, though, is going to come out nice and neatly. We aren't going to have any remainders. We're not going to convert those into decimals. I will teach you how to do that, but that's not today. Today, what we're really focusing on is just learning the algorithm. So the standard way of doing division. All right? So this saying is going to help you remember the algorithm for division. And I also tell my kids every year that you have to write this when you're doing long division until your 25th birthday. So until you've lived on this planet 25 years, I want you writing the algorithm for long division, or in this case the mnemonic device, the memory trick that stands for the algorithm for long division. So it goes like this. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? So everyone write that down the side of their paper. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? And this is where everyone goes, ew, gross, ew, no. Of course they don't. That would be disgusting. Well, we hope they don't. I'm sure it's happened, but that's really not the point of this lesson. But anyway, you can remember, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? Everyone say it with me. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? Okay, I know only about half of you did that, so let's try it one more time with the whole group. Let's go. Ready? Go. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? Much better that time. All right, so D is for divide. All right, so the first step is to divide. Then your next step, M stands for multiply. So first thing you're going to decide how many times the number goes into the other number. And then the next step is to multiply to see what that gives you. Then you're going to subtract. So we have divide, multiply, subtract. Our next step is a very important step that a lot of kids don't do, and it ends up causing some problems. It's check. All right, so divide, multiply, subtract, and check. So what you're checking is to make sure your difference between the product and what your divisor is, make sure that those two numbers, that you don't have a difference that is bigger than your divisor, because if you do, that means you can fit the divisor in another whole time. But we'll talk about it with examples. It doesn't have to make total sense right yet. So again, divide, multiply, subtract, check. The next one is bring down. So you're going to bring down the next number. And then R stands for repeat. All right, so again, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? Divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down, and repeat. All right, so this reminds me of one of my favorite jokes. Pete and repeat were in a boat. Pete fell out. Who's left? Repeat. Pete and repeat were in a boat. Pete fell out. Who was left? Repeat. Ha ha ha. And you could keep going on forever. Okay, anyway, so there you go. That is the algorithm for division. It's a standard way of doing long division. Since, your great-grandparents were doing long division, this is how they did it. All right, so that's what we're going to use. And next to each problem, we are going to write these letters, D, M, S, C, B, R, to remind us of our steps. All right, so our first example, actually back on page, let's go back to page 9 for you. It's showing page 8 on mine, but it's page 9 for you. We're going to use the algorithm to divide these two numbers. All right, so the first thing that you need to know is when numbers are listed horizontally for us to divide, we need to know which one goes into what I call the gazinta. So funny story about that. A few years ago, I was working with a different teacher, and that teacher was telling the kids that the name of this thing was the gazinta. And I was like, oh my goodness, I did not know that. I did not know that that's what it was called. I didn't think it had a name. And the teacher continued to say, oh yeah, the gazinta. Well, that was a big joke. I got laughed at because there is actually no name for that math symbol. So I jokingly call it now the gazinta. Goes into, get it? Ha ha ha. Obviously, I didn't the first time. Anyway, so the first number is the one getting chopped up. All right, this is the number that is going on the operating table. All right, so 1,755 is going to be split, divided evenly by 27. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to write down our little mnemonic device. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? So our first step here, the D stands for division. So we're going to see how many times does 27 go into 1. Does 27 go into 1? No, it does not. So we put a little baby X right there. So we've now got to check, does 27 go into 17? Well, no, it doesn't. We're going to put another little baby X. All right, the next thing we're going to do is see how many times does 27 go into 175. So this requires a little bit of thought. So we know 27 is pretty close to 30, right? And 175 is pretty close to 180. So we're kind of looking at this and doing some rounding so we can get in the ballpark, okay? So we're going to have some work on the side to show our multiplication, and that's great. Do not erase that work because we may need it. And plus, that's really important in math to show your work. So if I'm looking at that, it's essentially the same thing as saying, you know, how many times is 30 going to 180? That's going to put us in the ballpark. So I'm going to try 6, just because I know 27 is pretty close to 30, and 175 is pretty close to 180, and I know 30 would go into 180 6 times. So I'm using a little mental math, a little estimation to get me in the right area. All right, so 27 times 6, let's try it. 6 times 7 is 42, carry my 4. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 plus 4 is 16, so 162. Now if I would have said 7, for example, 27 times 7, right? 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 plus 4 is 18. 189 would be too high because that's bigger than 175. So I'm going to go with 6 times right here. Now this is very important. You need to make sure that you're putting the 6 directly above that 5, okay? So do not draw this on your paper, but you kind of want to think of it like little columns, okay? Little columns that you want to stay within, okay? Because you don't want a sloppy, you know, mess going on here. Some people like to use graph paper. Let's see if I can get rid of all those dots. All right, so just make sure you're lining that up. The 6 goes over the 5 of 175, okay? So 27 times 6. So first we divided. Now we need to multiply. So we're going to take 27 times 6. 27 times 6, well, we did that math right here, right, is 162. So 162, we're going to write that down. That was step 2. Our next step is S, subtract. So now we're going to take these two numbers and subtract. 5 minus 2 is 3. 7 minus 6 is 1. So I have 13 there. All right, I'll give you a second to catch up in case you're a little behind. So the next step is the check, all right? So this is where you take this number right here, this 13, and we're comparing it to 27, all right? We want to make sure that this number is less than this number. So 13 is less than 27. I'm going to get rid of that stuff. So we're good. The reason we do that is because if we ended up, let's say, only going 5 times, like I'll show you, 27 times 5, that's going to give you 35, 10, 13, that's going to give you 135. So let's just pretend for a second, and don't write this on your paper, but just pay attention here. So let's say you said 5 times, right? And then you got 162. When you subtracted, you would have gotten, oh, I'm sorry, not 162. You would have gotten 135, sorry, back up. 135. You would have subtracted, and you would have gotten 40, right? And we would say 40 is bigger than 27. I could actually fit another 27 in there. So you've got to make sure that that number, that difference, is smaller than your divisor. So again, I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to put a 6 right here. That's going to be 162, like it should have been the first time. And I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get 13, okay? So we've checked. 13 is smaller than 27. We're good. Next step is B for bring down. So bring down that 5. Now we're seeing how many times is, we're going to repeat, how many times does 27 go into 135? Well, guess what? I did that math right up here, so I'm good there. That's why you don't want to erase a bunch of stuff. Do not erase stuff, guys. Keep it on your paper. Not only is that good to refer back to, but it helps anyone trying to help you out understand what mistakes you may have made, okay? So anyway, that's 5 times. So we're going to divide 135 by 27. That's 5 times. And again, make sure that 5's above the last 5 in that problem. We're we're going to multiply. 27 times 5 is 135. Next step is to subtract. 135 minus 135 is 0. Check. Is 0 less than 27? You betcha. Bring down. We're out of numbers, right? If we had more numbers, we would keep going with that. If we had to continue and we ran out of numbers, you can always add a decimal and zeros, but we'll do that another day. All right, so bring down, and we don't need to repeat, so our answer is 65. All right, so the correct answer is 65. Now, one thing also, actually that's it. All right, if you have any questions, you can always pause the video, and I'm sure Mr. Aubin's a whiz at long division, so don't hesitate to ask if you have a question. We're going to keep practicing, so let's go to page 10 for you guys, which has 2 more examples. Find the quotient of 205,276 and 38. So again, we've got to determine which one goes into the gazinta. All right, so this number is being divided by this number. So 38 is the one doing the dividing. That's the divisor. So we are putting that on the outside. The 205,276. Make sure you spread those numbers out because you don't want to jam them in there. Like, this is not the day to use a size 2 font. Make sure you're writing big enough and giving yourself enough space to work. All right, but anyway, the 205,276 is the number getting chopped up. That's in the gazinta. That's what I like to say is on the operating table. All right, so let's write our mnemonic device here. Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers raw? And again, that stands for divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down, and repeat. So the first thing we're going to do is see, does 38 go into 2? No, it doesn't. So we're going to put a placeholder baby X right there, right up above it. Now, does 38 go into 20? No, it does not. But it does go into 205. So this is where we're going to use some estimating. So we've got a number pretty close to 200, and we're dividing that by a number pretty close to 40. So I'm thinking, how many times does 4 go into 20? And I know that's 5 times. So I'm going to guess it's going to be 5. All right, and again, I'm using some rounding skills to do that. I'm using some estimation. 200 divided by 40 is going to be 5, so I'm guessing it's got to be pretty close here. So let's try it out. 5 times 38. So 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 4 is 19. So 190. If I did it 6 times, let's try it. 6 times 8 is 48. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 plus 4 is 22. That's going to be too high, so I want to go with 5 times. So right up above this 5, I'm going to write a 5. All right, so I just divided. Now I need to multiply, which I kind of already did over here. So 38 times 5 is 190. And again, I'm getting that from this section right there. So 190. Next step is to subtract these two. So 5 minus 0 is 5, and then 20 minus 19 is 1. So 15 is what's left. We're going to check. Is 15 less than 38? Yes, it is. All right, we're going to now bring down our next number. So we're going to bring down the 2 straight down. So we have now 152. And we're going to repeat the process. So divide. How many times does 38 go into 152? So, you know, you could try 4 or 3 times. We could do both, either, whatever. Use some estimation here. So how many times does 40 go into a number pretty close to 160? Well, I would say 4 times because 4 goes into 16 4 times. So let's do that. 38 times 4. 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. So 152. Whoa, it comes out exactly. Nice. All right, so 38 times 4 gives us 152. So we just divided, Now we're multiplying. That gives us 152. All right. Our subtraction is next. When you subtract, you get 0. All right. Is 0 less than 38? You betcha. We're going to now bring down our next number, 27. Oh, I'm sorry, not 27, 7. Now, we're going to repeat. Does 38 go into 7? No, it doesn't. So this is where a lot of kids are going to goof up. 38 does not go into 7, so we need to put a 0 here. All right, so 38 times 0 is 0. You're going to bring all this down. You multiply, subtract, you get 7. Bring down the 6. All right, so now we're going to divide. How many times does 38 go into 76? Well, I'm going to guess twice. So you're going to write a 2 right up above that 6. So 38 times 2, it is 76, but I'm going to show the work here. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So 38 times 2 is 76. We're going to subtract. You're going to get 0. There are no more numbers to deal with, so we are done. All right? So the correct answer here, the quotient of 205,276 divided by 38 is 5,402. All right? Okay. We have another problem I'd like to do with you guys, and then I will let you spend the rest of the class period working on your homework. All right? So let's do this next one. We have 891,156 divided by 12. All right, here we go. So again, most of you, hopefully none of you are 25 yet. That'd be scary. I don't want to park next to you in the middle school parking lot. All right, does McDonald's serve cheeseburgers raw? So divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down, and repeat. So 12 does not go into 8, right? So we're going to put a little placeholder baby x above that 8. Now we're looking at how many times does 12 go into 89. Well, you guys should know that 12 times 7, right, math fact, should be 84, right? So we have 12 times 7 is 84. So we've just divided. Put that 7 right up above the 9. We're going to multiply. We get 84. Now we're going to subtract. All right, so 89 minus 84 is a difference of 5. Now we're going to check. Is 5 less than 12? Yes, it is. We're good there. We're going to bring down our next number, which is a 1. And we're going to repeat the process. All right, so how many times does 12 go into 51? Well, I know 12 times 4 is 48, so I'm going to put a 4 there. So now I'm going to multiply. 12 times 4 is 48. I'm going to subtract, which gives me 3. I'm going to check, is 3 less than 12? You betcha. All right, now we've got to bring down. So take this 1, bring it down. We're seeing how many times. Now we're going to repeat the process. How many times does 12 go into 31? Well, 12 goes into 36 3 times, so this can only be twice. Right, so 12 times 2. So we know we divided here. We need to multiply. 12 times 2 is 24. Let me scroll up a little bit. Whoa. Let me fix that. There we go. And scroll down. There we go. All right. So where was I? All right. Now we multiplied. Now we need to subtract. All right. So 31 minus 24 is a difference of 7. Right? Because I got to borrow here. 11 minus 4 is 7. Now we're going to check. Is 7 less than 12? Yes, it is. Next step is to bring down our next number. Our next number, which is 5. All right. So how many times, we're figuring out, since we're repeating now, how many times does 12 go into 75? Well, let's think about this. You guys should know your 12 facts. So 12 times 6 gives us 72, right? 12 times 6, that gives you 12. Carry your 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So 72. So 12 times 6 is 72. Now we've just divided and multiplied. Now we need to subtract. So we're going to get a difference of 3. When you subtract, we're going to check. 3 is less than 12. We're good there. We're going to bring down our next number, which is 6. How many times now does 12 go into 36? It goes in 3 times. And that gives you an answer of 36. Subtract and get 0. You are done. You're out of numbers. Woohoo. Good for you. All right, 74,263. So long division is called long division because A, you're not using a calculator. There are quite a few steps to it. They're all baby steps, so that's why you have to be super careful in each step that you're multiplying correctly, that you're subtracting correctly, that you're being neat and lining up those place values. You want to make sure that you're not making goofball errors because they're going to catch up with you pretty quickly. Now, a way to check your work is to, on any of these, if you take this divisor and your quotient and multiply them, you should get your dividend right in there, okay? So again, if you take, did I just move that? No. All right, if you take this number, like for example, if you take 38 times 5,402, when you multiply that, you should get 205,276. All right, so that's a way to check your work. But again, be careful, take your time. You are going to have the rest of this period to work, so you cannot use a calculator. You are to use your own brain and skill set, showing your work, not erasing things. If you go to page 10 and 11, we just did 10. Why don't you guys finish page 11 for homework? So page 11, you have 3 questions there. They shouldn't be terribly difficult. Give you a hint, all of your answers are going to be in the thousands. All right, so there you have it. All right, so page 11 is your homework. You can get started on that now quietly. Thank you to Mr. Aubin for subbing for me, and have a great day, guys. When you leave, please make sure you're pushing in your chairs, but you still have time to work. So, all right, have a good day, guys. Bye. I'll see you tomorrow.